All right, well, hello everyone. It's Doug here with the LincolnList.com. I want to welcome you to Happy Hour with the Lincoln. We're on episode number 24. And if you're new to this whole thing, this is where I test a little whiskey, talk some of my favorite stock trading ideas for the upcoming week, as well as whatever else may babble out of my mouth. Before I get started, I want to say I have some very awesome news for most of you out there, and some very bad news for like 3 or 4 of you. I will not be able to do a happy hour next week, so there will not be one. I'll be in Las Vegas riding my motorcycle around a racetrack for a couple of days and doing some camping as well. So I'm just not going to be able to get around to doing it. It was supposed to be our 25th, so while I'm out there, I'm going to do something special for everyone, but you won't be able to see the episode until the following week. But I'm going to do something nice because it will be our 25th happy hour, and just stay tuned for that. Also, before I get started, I do want to remind everyone is that Trade Ideas is having another open house. If you've been watching these happy hours throughout and a couple of the other whiteboards that I've done, every so often Trade Ideas will do an open house. If you don't know what that is, it's one of the, in my opinion, one of the best trading scanners out there for finding stock ideas. They're going to be doing an open house, which also includes their artificial intelligence that goes with that, which is something I think is cutting edge. It's way too cutting edge, I think, for me and some of us old timers. But they have this great AI technology where they can actually auto trade for you. And as I said, they don't offer this all the time, so it's a good chance to try out the scanners and get a feel for Trade Ideas to see if it's a fit for you in your trading business. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to post a link where you can sign up for that open house. Then I'm going to put a couple of links after that I've done some reviews and some quick starting tips on how this scanner works if some of you want to look into a little bit deeper. So don't forget Trade Ideas next week, having an open house. So today with this whiskey, I'm digging low. I'm going way down low here with some buckshot. So basically what it's come down to, I mentioned a couple of weeks, maybe a month or so ago, just buying these little ones. So every time I see one of these small ones, I just pick it up. And usually they're so small I can't even read what it says. But it seems like the cornier, remember Crooked Fox? It's like the cornier it gets, the more excited I get about buying it. I haven't been able to do much research on what it's a bourbon, obviously, but I haven't been able to do research, unlike the rest of these ones that have their own dedicated website. It was really difficult for me to find the website for this, and it does have a listing, but I couldn't open up the page. This is going to go for about $16 big dollars. $16 in a 750 milliliter. I think I paid $3 for this one, so that's like, wow, I overpaid. And like I said, it's a bourbon, but it is a peppered maple bourbon. So we had Spice Box last week, which was a peppered spice. We've had Honeydewars, and now we're into we've even had herbal. When we had Cold Cock whiskey, was herbal whiskey. So now we're down to peppered maple. It seems like it never ends. It's kind of like whiskeys are turning into like cranberries. You know, like you used to have cranberry juice. Then you had like cran apple, then cran grape, then cran melon. It's like they just shoved that cran in. It's like the cranberry people just shoved that cranberry into every kind of drink. Now they're just shoving flavors into all kinds of stuff. Apple, spice, cinnamon. And to each their own. As I said before, where these whiskeys usually come in my opinion, which might be wrong, is they're good starter whiskeys for people that don't like that burn. And it's also a sweeter, so sometimes people like that sweet taste of these whiskeys. They also seem to go good in teas and desserts and stuff like that. So I like maple, I like spices, and I like bourbon. Question is, will I like spiced maple bourbon? We're going to find out. Now this smells like, man, this smells good. Like, I don't even think it's whiskey. It smells like a Krispy Kreme maple donut. Oh man, that sounded good, didn't it? Krispy Kreme maple donut. I'm going to have to go get me one of these after the happy hour's over. It is straight maple. Now, when remember the Cold Cock had a herbal ginseng kind of smell to it. It was kind of sweet too. It says pepper, but I don't smell any pepper whatsoever. If you remember last week, we had Spice Box. I could really smell the spice. So let's just give this bourbon $16 big dollars. I should have just bought a big one, huh? Could have gave it away down the street. Buckshot. Let's see what we got here. I can't even get that back on. I'm going to hold it up there. This is clear. Clear. Some of the last ones that had mix in them were really muddy looking. And as I said, now that's in the glass, I can smell. Yeah, it's like cough syrup, like a mapled cough syrup. Somehow I lost the smell I went from a donut to cough syrup. Anyway, let's try it out. Oh, it's smooth. It's smooth and sweet. Oh, I can taste the pepper now. There was an aftertaste. Oh, it's like the pepper got stuck on the roof of my mouth, like I had a chili pepper. Not bad. Anyway, I will say that it fits right in there with some of the last few that we did. I think when you're looking at it, at least my opinion, if you're looking for the mixed stuff that's in whiskey, I liked the Honey Dewar Scotch. Of course, I'm partial to Scotch. I like Scotch much better than I like bourbon. You may like bourbons better than you like Scotch. To each their own, as I say. But I'm going to put this right in that group with Cold Cock Whiskey, which was a herbal whiskey. The Spice Box that we had last week, which was I liked it better because it was a spicier taste. It was just a good spicy taste. This is kind of mixing those flavors. Now that I'm tasting it, you really can taste the separation between the pepper and the maple. So like when I first drank it, I tasted the maple. I could feel that maple, like you had like a Krispy Kreme donut. Then the liquor came in after that with a kick. And then after it was all swallowed and you sat there, you started to feel the pepper burn in the roof of your mouth. So it was like in 3 increments for me. And as I said before, I like it when everything comes in one flavor, like it just goes straight through. You can taste a little bit of each, but it's not overwhelming. Same thing, because like before I said, I love those smoky Scotch whiskeys in the island of Islay. And that's what I like. Not just so overbearing smoke, but a good blend of smoke, some good flavors, along with a nice smooth alcohol taste. Here I feel, which you may be different, I feel like it's separate. It's separating each and every one of the ingredients. But I mean, after I drink a few more, I won't even taste it because my tongue will be numb. Now, it doesn't have very much of a kick either, because it says it's only like 70 proof. So that's a little bit lacking. But if you're looking for, again, another sweet, spicy whiskey, I think this would be good for baking. Last week when I said Spice Box would be good for bread pudding, this would be good for bread pudding too. This would be good in tea, maybe a coffee or something like that if you're looking for an extra kick. Otherwise, it's a straight drink. It just doesn't do it for me. Now, I've seen a lot of these before. I told you I couldn't find anything on this Buckshot. They have a website, but I couldn't open it up. And I think a lot of these companies here are just buying, like Finn Logan did. They're buying these juvenile barrels. So kind of look at it this way for you stock traders. Some of these whiskey companies are like biotech stocks. You know, when a cheaper biotech or a lower biotech, for lack of a better word, I don't know what I'm trying to say. You know what I'm saying. Not one of the big biotechs. But they get started with a drug. It's not quite in the pipeline. They can't make any money on it. The stock price goes up in speculation that this is going to be a life-altering drug. And how they stay alive for years without having any drugs in the pipeline, or very little drugs in the pipeline, is they do secondaries or financing offers on their stock price, which dilutes the shares and raises capital for the company. I think a lot of these, like these kind of whiskeys, are using bourbons and whiskeys from maybe like a Jack Daniels or a Jim Beam or another company like that. I'm just speculating here. I'm not saying it. But like, you got to figure, if you were going to start a whiskey company and you were going to do like 10 years, you would be open for 10 years before you produced your first bottle of whiskey. So what are you going to do from year 0 to 10 as far as revenues? So what a lot of these places will do, and even as they get established, they'll do it as a revenue source, is as they're making all of these casks, they'll sell a big chunk of these casks in like year 4 or year 5 to another outfit with another name. Heck, they could even own some of these. But it's a way for them to generate a lot of revenue keep their doors open for some of the newer distilleries, or just generate some instant cash for the company, which is always a good thing, right? But rather than put their name on it, that's probably what they do is they get their bourbon from someplace else and then they mix in the herbs or some other kind of maple or whatever sweetness they're going to put into it. That's just my opinion. So that's that. So anyway, I want to talk a little bit about, before I go into my stocks, just briefly, the first quarter is now done for 2017. I was going to say 2014. Maybe there is actually more proof inside of the pepper. And it was a good quarter because it was nicely profitable. It was a little ways off of last year, but I had an outstanding year last year trading for sure. But the thing I want to make about a comment with this market, it seems as if everybody just started sitting on their hands. There's been this volatility, and what I mean by this is there was a time when, for several years, there was just too many opportunities. Like your problem was not being able to keep up with how many opportunities were going on in the day. There was always something happening, seemingly almost every day, every minute. Wild swings in the market, great volatility. Now, if you're a day trader, that's what you feed on. The more volatility, the more fear, the more anxiety, the more euphoria, the better it is. I mean, you thrive in that. Now, if you're an investor or a swing trader, you don't like that. You want it the other way. You want a nice, calm, and clean market. Now, if I go back and after the election, we got that Brexit-style move where the market just went up, made all-time highs, and then it just camped out like for the remainder of the year. You got a little bit of a boost right there in January, but right before the inauguration, it was like everybody just got on their hands and sat there. And it seems like there's just little money flow. It's just been like this, Sure, the market's kind of up, down days here and there. But as I mentioned last week, I think it was 64 to 65 days had passed before the market had made a 1% intraday move. So that's the longest period in history. The most peaceful market in history was from December up until like last week. I would like to see a little more volatility. I don't need like psycho, crackhead volatility, but I'd like to get a little bit more. I'd like to I'd like to see more come your way, because really what it's come down to be honest with everyone, is you get 1 to 2 great shots a day. And it probably in the long run has made us all better traders, because you're so focused on those 1 to 2 primo opportunities, because if you miss them, your day's over. I mean, it's almost like holiday trading. You get 1 hour to 1 hour and a half in the morning, and then that's it. Game over. You might see something a little bit later on, but for the most part, it's just straight flat. So it really feels, that's what I could kind of relate it to. It reminds me of a holiday trading. The day before a holiday, day before 4th of July, Memorial Day. It feels like every day is like that. Now, I'm sure that will change, but it's interesting to see that as we make this economical transition, this political transition. It seems that if what Wall Street is telling us right now is they're not 100% sold on the promises that the administration has made. Therefore, what they have chose to do is sit on their hands and not put so much money to work. As I said, at some point, one of those two sides will give. Maybe they need more time. Who knows what the reasonings are? That's not up to me to decide. As I've always said, I just wake up every day and trade the market. That's what I do. So enough of that. How about we get to stocks? Let me swallow a little pepper. Let's start out by talking about the market. All right, guys, as we take a look here at the market, as we always do, I'm going to open up this bottom chart. This is the daily chart down below. I'm going to open up just a little bit bigger. There was a little bit of action there the previous week with a nice little sell-off that created some pretty good opportunities. Then you got a test of this 50-day moving average. That's where I left this thing off last week, was wanting to see how were we going to react at that 50 moving average. Now, you can definitely expect, I say definitely, because, well, nothing's really definite. I should change my phrase there. But you can kind of expect a spike. You got a market that for years has rewarded people for buying the dip. So if you're kind of looking for a correction or wanting to see if the market's going to do that, it's not something that's going to happen overnight. People are so used to buying the dip. Algos are so programmed to buy the dip. It's going to take a little bit more to shake those people out. But anyway, you saw a nice bounce off this 50 moving average and a pretty strong week. Every day was a pretty strong week up until you get to the end of the quarter. Sometimes you get that window dressing and you get some nutty moves in the market here. But nonetheless, a pretty sharp bounce, 231.65 off the 50 moving average, up to about 235.86 on the SPY. That's pretty good. Now you're connecting with the 20 moving average on the daily chart. We'll see how that plays out as we go through the course of the week. Still, the thing that is on my mind here is there was a time over the last few years where this market would have hit that 50 moving average and just rocket launched to all-time highs. Seeing maybe, I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, just a little bit different tempo in the market where a lot of these big moves in the market get stuffed, getting sold off, or not being able to build on the shorter term rallies. That's something that we're going to have to kind of watch here a little bit. I think if we get back down into this 50 moving average and start closing underneath of that, which would be 233s, high 233s, then maybe there would be a short-term correction leading us into the summer. We'll have to see. If it makes its way back up into the 238s, everyone's going to think it's just business as usual, and that will be that. Now, as far as stocks are concerned, there are a couple of big movers on Friday I want to take a look at carrying over into Monday. One is Sage here. This thing is this is a beast, and I don't know if technical analysis really applies to this thing at all. I got a little bit of a short there and just kind of scratched on the thing. I've had some issues with this thing in the past, and what I mean is it trades so thin sometimes that it can easily be spiked by the difference just between the bid and the ask price. Sometimes that's 30 or 40 cents. If you look at it from a technical view on the daily, this thing is right there at the breakout. You can see it right here. I'm going to put the cursor right on top of it. It's $71, and that's right here where it's sitting, 71.16. So that's at the breakout. Even though it really looks slow as it's doing it, as you're looking in hindsight, this looks like a really good ramp up. It looks like a big move, but it actually does this like in slow motion. So a lot of times it'll ramp and it'll just camp out up there. My thoughts on this is it's a tough short just based on the way this thing acts. It's not something that you can just rely based solely on technical analysis that, hey, if this thing rips, short it. However, because of the way it looks, if it does go $2 to $3 starting out first thing on Monday morning, that would be my first thing to do. If you start to see this thing build and work its way back up over 72, I hate to say it, but it's probably it's a former runner. It's had a tendency back here like this to put in solid 4, 5, 6 day runs spanning $10 to $15 in stock price. So maybe you see something here that really gets that thing fired up. It's just one to watch. Same thing can be said for DXPE. It acts the same way. And like I'm saying, sometimes these things will just skip prices. Like you go back and you look at this Sage, there's a couple spots in here. Let me see if I can open up this upper chart so you guys can see it. It's like a couple spots, like right here. Let me open this up. Let me just show what I'm talking about. Because even low floats not always do this. Okay. This spot right here, if you guys can see it, this is an actual skip. Like this stops at about 70.25. And then the next bar is like 70.40. So there's like a gap here. There's not even a trade in this area. So this is like just skipped 30 cents. There wasn't even a trade there. So sometimes that's what these thin ones do. They'll park like you have the bid and the ask. Sometimes they'll stretch that ask out there and somebody comes by and buys it, drops 100 shares on it, and then the stock spikes. So interesting. But DXP's kind of that way. Also another former runner you see back here has done the same thing. Coming out of this break here, it went from 30 all the way to 38 before it stopped. Today, coming out of earnings, big move. And you got some resistance up here towards 40. We're just going to be looking at 40. And I wouldn't short this thing unless it was above 40. And it did that. And it did that straight away. You can see it's already gapping a little bit post-market. It probably has more in it. But just watch this one. It could actually be a long for some of you that like those kind of longs. Up to $40, maybe $41. But DXPE is one I'd like to take a look at. I also want to look at Tesro, T-S-R-O. Now, there was a time when this stock was just an animal, but this chart is starting to get really torched. You know, it's had its issues, but one of the things I'm noticing here is every single breakout on this chart has been stuffed as well. It just keeps getting sold off. It can't hold anything. Now, maybe this is something that doesn't come into play until later in the week or even the week after. But what I've been looking at is there's been a lot of wicks. Wicks are these little tails on the bottom of this chart. There's been a lot of these wicks at 148.80s. They've been trying to, whatever's happening here, it's been trying to hold itself up. You see, it had a sell-off here, finishes with a wick here, a wick here, a wick, wicky, right? It's been holding that. So it's just like fighting off elimination at this point. If it gets underneath of that, you may see an aggressive piece of selling. So I don't think I'm interested in shorting this until you see a breakdown of 146, more specifically a close under 146. And this thing has the potential to rotate back down to the next support lines of 130 or even lower. So there's some space in this. Key is, will it either hold that and bounce off of this number and eventually build on this number, or will it give it up and then just sort of collapse and trade back down into the next support? But this Tesro looking more bearish than it is bullish. Also, RH, the Restoration Hardware. This thing is on a nice little flyer from its earnings. It was already running up from the previous earnings, so you had a pretty good run, and then you get a nice little spike here, a nice little big gap. This thing's getting vertical, starting to get vertical. Maybe worth a look for a short. I say maybe because there's always something that can come by at any minute that would be better than this. The last couple of ones I showed you, they have decent looking charts, but their intraday movements are slow. And I like to see a little bit more speed when I do shorting, because I've gone through this before. You don't just short a stock because it's up. You know, that's not the only reason that you do it. It has to be a piece of euphoria, like a little mini bubble. This is kind of setting up that way, but it is yet to deliver the speed and the verticalness and the parabolicness intraday. But if it gets up towards 47s, maybe even 50s, I'll take a look at it. But this is up quite a bit, and I just want to put it on the list. Now I'm going to switch it up here with a potential buy, and that's going to be on the PLSE. This is one that we've talked about before, and this is what you're looking at, what happens to stocks. You know, what goes up must come down. It's, you know, this is what we've always talked about as well, as people think stocks go up or down. It's up and down. What goes up goes down. Everything goes through a cycle. And this was one of those parabolics that we talked many times before in these happy hours. This was a parabolic. This was a nice vert. This was a short we wanted to be in. I believe I even brought it up on last week's list. I'm not sure. But this was just one of those nice verts, steep RSI, looking good, and it sold off. Now, this is definitely sold off more than what I thought it was going to sell off. These are some serious reds, especially the last 2 days of trading, going from 33 all the way down into 19. This thing might be doomed with that kind. That's a big shakeout. But I'd like to watch this as maybe a buying opportunity. You've had a couple of really solid days, and people that are short or hanging on this are going to cover. I'd look down right around this area, $16. I know it seems like it's far away, but you know, you get a couple of more moves on it. It's going to be at 16. 16 would be a solid area for a buy. Or if you can find some area where this might pivot, I'm not saying this thing's going to go back into highs, but maybe there's a nice bounce play after 2 vicious days of selling. You might be able to get just a short-term relief rally to take advantage of, if nothing else, just a short covering rally. This thing's got some potential to just spike one day, $2 or $3. So I want to watch it, try to monitor some levels. As I said, 16 would be a great level, but that might be just a little too far away. We don't know yet. We'll see how it works on Monday. Well, I think that just about does it. That's going to be my plan going into Monday, and anything could change. Hopefully, as we progress through this quarter with earnings seasons coming up, we get a little more juice in this market. We'd like to see a little bit more action. In review, I don't know what to say about the pepper. The peppered maple. I like the smell of maple because I love maple, but it's just not my thing. But I could see where it would fit in. Desserts probably be really good with this, and some teas or something like that. Anyway, don't forget, guys, as well. Won't be a happy hour. I know some of you are disappointed. But won't be a happy hour next week because I'll be in Vegas. But I will do something nice because it'll be our 25th. And also, don't forget trade ideas. Trade ideas. This is a great opportunity to try this out. As far as I know, really the only place that's doing successful artificial intelligence trading, which could be the future. We may all end up being replaced by robots. Who knows? So anyway, enjoy your week of trading. As always, if you need help, visit thelincolnlist.com. Take a free trial to our live trade room. Until happy hour episode number 25 in 2 weeks' time. Cheers.